Hi, my name is Adriana, and today I will be going over my 2020 reading stats. Okay, so this is kind of my raw data page that I use to collect kind of all of the calculations and all of the stats that I use. I guess let me go over to the left. These are all the different books that I read in 2020. So I read 26 books in total. Start date, end date. I just do a simple calculation to show days read. I get the page count from Goodreads. I do a cumulative page count going through each book. A reading rate, which is just a quick pages per day. I do a genre. I do a subgenre. This audiobook column is for a pivot table that you'll see on the next tab. I have my ratings in here. Some of these, as you can see, I don't have ratings for. Most of those are middle grade rereads that it seems I'm just heavily biased when it comes to those rereads because a lot of them are like childhood favorites. And then I also have the price of the ebook from Google Books because that's where I mostly buy my books from. And then over in the savings column, these are all books that I got from the library instead of buying them. And I'm keeping track of that. So for those of you who've seen my Kobo Libra H2O review, that e-reader inspired me to start using the library. So I'm kind of doing a bit of a payback calculation as to how much that is saving me because I'm using the library instead of buying all these ebooks from Google Books. So I think that kind of goes through all of my raw data / preliminary calculations. So moving over to, I have my cumulative pages versus end date. So that just kind of, I think it's an interesting line graph, how many pages I read over the course of a year. And then looking down at this other graph, I actually need to update it. So I think that'll be kind of a good little tutorial. I kind of struggle with Google Sheets. I'm a Excel person myself, but I don't want to pay to have it at home. So I'm using Sheets. So I think if I double click on this, yes, there we go. It should, and then we go to setup, and the data range is what I need to change. So if I open that up, the x-axis is this first one, that's the C. So if we scroll over, you can see that's end date here, and that goes from C1, which obviously it's not going to count because it's a text, all the way down to C27. So that's the whole range, but I need to fix the y-axis, which is this reading rate, and that needs to be a 27. Okay. So then we can X out of that and look at the updated. So mostly I kind of wanted to use this to see if there was any sort of correlation between how quickly I was reading and the time of year. Doesn't provide too much interesting data. I guess it's somewhat interesting that I guess this March time frame is right when I first started working from home and quarantining. I'm not really sure. Oh, I think this April jump is when I first got my e-reader. So I guess that's fairly interesting. This was red, white, and royal blue. I read the entire book in a day, so obviously that's going to be a huge spike. So jumping over to the 2020 Gantt chart. This is actually an idea I got from a comment on my last reading stats video. So I'll put his comment somewhere up, I guess in the bigger picture. But he said that he uses a sparkline graph, or I call it a Gantt chart, to kind of see all of his different books and how he progressed through them throughout the year. So I think it's fairly interesting. Try to spread that out a little bit more. I got my sparkline formula. I guess let's look at the sparkline. I got this from a video by Ilya Michelson. So I'll link his video down below. His is actually more geared towards an official kind of project Gantt chart. So this is a little bit simpler than what he ends up using, but if you want to set up your own sparkline graph like this, I would suggest watching his video, or if you want, you can pause it and copy my formula, but I would highly suggest his video because he's very good at explaining what all the different functions are and how they all kind of work out. And I guess I do need to update this real quick, so give me a hot minute. So I have all of those in there, and then I should just be able to drag this down and we can see all the rest of the book. So I think this is a fairly interesting visual, but I think for me, I'm just a lot more interested in rates, but it is kind of interesting to see my reading gaps or slumps through here. So you can see Ninth House put me into a bit of a slump. I did not like that book, and it shows. And Children of Virtue and Vengeance put me into a slump. So I think in 2021, it might be worth it for me to start DNFing more books, just so I don't force myself to read through a book I'm not really enjoying, and then when I'm done, I don't want to read for a while. So I think this is pretty good at showing that is hurting me in the long run, forcing myself through these books. So I think that's about all of the information I can gather out of this. Oh, I guess something interesting to know, I don't know. I mean, I really just wanted to do this for the year of 2020, so I have my overall start date and end date of January 1, 2020 through New Year's Eve of 2020. And when I put in the actual start date for Thunderhead, which was back in 2019, it messed up this formula. So I don't know, somebody who's better at Sparkline and Google Sheets, if you want to look into that for me and let me know, I would really appreciate it. So moving on to percent read in each genre. So this is 2020 and this is 2019. I don't think this is updated. Yeah. So if we look at this pivot table editor, it's only going to K25, and I definitely think that should be going to 27. Did that update anything? Oh, that's fine. Make sure I should probably, for my 2021, I'm probably just gonna make that a drop down now that I kind of have a better idea of how I set that up. There we go. So we can see in total, I read a lot of fantasy in 2020. I think that's the booktube effect. A bit of thriller, some sci-fi, some romance, a couple nonfictions. Oh, I think I don't have any filters on this genre read. So this includes all of the middle grades I read, Harry Potter and Percy Jackson. This includes the one audiobook I listened to this year. So again, pretty interesting to compare. I think it's only going to get more interesting as I collect more data year to year and I'm able to compare what I'm drawn to and what effects those could have. I think it's also kind of interesting. I read almost twice as much as I did in 2019 as far as grand total sum of pages. Oh, I guess for me, I did the genre read by pages as opposed to just books. It feels more accurate to me, but I guess it just kind of depends on how you feel about it.
Hey guys, editing Adriana. I realized something else that I wanted to do in this end of year stats video was a histogram of the book links that I read in 2019 and 2020. So you can see here on the right, I have my histogram of pages in 2020. This is book length in pages. Fairly interesting. It's not exactly normally distributed, a little bit of a right tail. Definitely more so in 2020, where you can see it's definitely got a leader off to the right. But what I did find interesting is my average page length in 2019 was 460 pages for a book, and in 2020 it was 423. So I thought that was kind of interesting that I actually ended up reading shorter books in 2020. But you can definitely see in both of these, the mean is definitely been weighted by some outliers on the longer side, because they are both a bit higher than the median. So, another interesting statistic just to talk about.
And then to one of my favorites, this is the reading rate calculation by genre that, I don't know, I think it's really interesting. I love rates, and I think it tells a lot more of a story than just kind of general sums or any sort of other visualization. So this is my 2020 table with middle grade, but I believe without audiobooks. So I'm not including an audiobook in my reading rate. I really just want to look at physical books, or in my case, ebooks, something that I'm actually reading with my eyes as opposed to listening to someone read the book at 1.5 speed while I'm doing dishes or whatever. So as you can see, middle grade, pretty heavily, all the middle grade I read was in this fantasy realm, so it weights my reading rate in the fantasy genre a little bit. But as far as anything else, interesting. Why is this different? Okay, so I guess I have some interesting things going on. There we go. Okay, so I had some interesting things going on with my subgenre filters. For some reason, so I guess when I added some new subgenres to my raw data page, I guess it wasn't automatically adding these to my pivot table. So I guess that's something to keep in mind. If you have these filters and you are filtering stuff out, you need to make sure that you're adding in and that it's counting your new stuff. So I think, yep, okay. That all looks normal now. So I guess I read a grand, well, I'm sure I took more days off than this, but if we just do a quick, this year was a leap year, right? 366 minus that. At about 27 days where I wasn't reading, where I wasn't actively reading a book this year. So ideally, I would lower that number for 2021. Well, I guess all that's left is to talk about my goals for next year, 2021. I love starting a fresh spreadsheet. So putting that in there. My goal as far as books goes is I would like to read 30 books this year. So I think what I'm going to do is highlight all of these so that if they don't get filled, it looks like trash and I kind of hate myself. That's how you get things done. You tell yourself you're gonna hate yourself if you don't do it. So that should, the first book I'm reading this year is Ready Player 2, and I started that on 12/31/2020. Just to get kind of my formulas set up, end date minus start date. Oh yeah, that's gonna be strange for now. Pages I'll get from Goodreads, cumulative pages. We'll start with this, and then this one will be this plus this. Reading rate will be pages per day. Genre, this is science fiction, I guess. Oh, I was gonna make a drop-down menu. I don't know how to do that. I'll have to learn. Well, let's see if we can't figure it out. It's probably pretty similar to what's in genre drop down. So let's go fiction, romance, sci-fi. What else do I read? I guess I should just copy the list of genres I already have set out. There we go. Control C, Control V. There we go. Genre drop down. So let's move this to the end and go back to here. I guess I don't really remember how to do this in Excel either, so I'm gonna look those up right now. Data. Data validation. Cell range. There we go. Now I shouldn't get the issue of me spelling things wrong or typing things differently, so it doesn't mess up my pivot table for 2021. I think that's all I have. As far as I have a reading goal, I would like to see, this guy be, I think this is pretty diverse actually. I like the way that looks. Maybe a little less fantasy, a little more sci-fi, a little more thriller this next year. Pretty happy with the amount of romance I read. Nonfiction, I have my goal of reading one nonfiction every year, and I think I will stick to that happy goal. So if you have any questions about how I set up my reading stats, or if you have any recommendations for other things I should be tracking in my reading, I would love to hear about them in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, and I will catch you on the next video.